Very much. Let's get some more now with three U.S. members of Congress whose districts have been rocked by the violence of the past week. Representative Marc Veasey's district includes parts of Dallas. Representative Cedric Richmond of Louisiana represents Baton Rouge, and Representative Keith Ellison's district is only a couple of miles from where Philando Castile was shot and killed. Congressman, thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Congressman Ellison, 21 police officers were injured in St. Paul, as you know, Saturday night. What's the situation like in your community right now?
Well, you know, the St. Paul Police Department's done a lot to de-escalate violence, do anti-racism training. In fact, they had nothing to do with what happened in Falcon Heights. It was completely different departments. And the activists, the protesters who have every right to protest, were actually trying to de-escalate the harm and have condemned the violence against those officers. The officers, you know, I talked to the mayor, Chris Coleman, today. He's proud of his department, and his department wasn't implicated. They've done a lot of work.
So who is responsible for injuring 21 police officers?
Well, there's some people who were not part of the peaceful protest, but who thought that the right thing for them to do was to escalate the problem. And this is a challenge of the peaceful protesters. Not only are we trying to raise important issues around police violence, but the other end, the extreme end, is we got to try to control them so that we can stay on focus and try to bring the needed reform.
We also know over the weekend, Congressman Richmond, hundreds of people were arrested in Baton Rouge. What are you hearing from your constituents?
Well, in Baton Rouge, we've had a number of protests, and they started back early last week, and we've only had arrested the last 2 days' worth of protests, which are unfortunate, but our governor and others have decided that once roadways are obstructed, that they would arrest. My concern is more along the lines of when it escalates to violence and when police officers are heavy-handed in those arrests. And I would just tell you that we have had young people on the capitals of the state capitol on the steps. We've had young people at police headquarters protesting, but we have not seen the overall violence. But the big question that we have in terms of our arrest are where's the escalation coming from between people who were protesting peacefully for almost a week and now
But if protesters are blocking highways, for example, that's against the law.
Well, we're asking them not to block highways because especially in Baton Rouge where we have not great access to emergency care and other things, that you're actually putting other people's lives in danger. And they have made their point and they continue to make their point, but they are, for the most part, our protests have been very peaceful.
You represent, Congressman Veasey, the Dallas-Fort Worth area. The police chief, David Brown, he's a very impressive guy. I don't know if you know him personally.
Well.
You know well. He said this today. Let me play the clip for you, and then we'll discuss.
We're just asking us to do too much. Every societal failure, we put it off on the cops to solve. Not enough mental health funding. Let the cop handle it. Not enough drug addiction funding. Let's give it to the cops. Here in Dallas, we got a loose dog problem. Let's have the cops chase loose dogs. You know, schools fail. Give it to the cops. 70% of the African community is being raised by single women. Let's give it to the cops to solve that as well. That's too much to ask.
What's your thoughts?
The police do need more help. Chief David Brown is doing a great job, but I do think on the congressional level, for instance, that we can do more to promote the passage of money for community policing grants, for instance. You know, President Obama is really trying to put together a great initiative with his 21st Century Task Force on community policing. What can we do in Congress to promote things more like that? And the answer is that we need more money so we can spread that type of message nationwide.
Is there support legislatively in the House and the Senate for that kind of legislation?
There needs to be, obviously. If I think that we can prevent a lot of the interactions that we see, a lot of the devastation that's been caused by some of these police shootings if we had more programs like that.
You agree?
I totally agree. I mean, look, you know, people are inadequately housed. They're not making enough money. They're relying on there's all these social programs, and we say to the police officers, go handle these problems. We need to invest in our country with good wages, good jobs, good education, and not just, and not just say, no, police deal with it, and if they can't deal with it, then put them in prison. I mean, it is a societal cop-out that the officers have all this stuff to handle.
Congressman Richmond, you know Congress. Is there any chance that's going to pass anytime soon?
Well, I've had conversations with both the Speaker, the Majority Leader, and the Whip about more money for community policing, the COPS program, also safe neighborhood grants, and other things. And I think there's a openness and a willingness to do it. Also, Dave Reichert out of Washington, who's a former sheriff, I just left there talking to him about it. And I think it's something that both sides can come together on, and it's not something we should play politics about. This is our future, and this is far too serious. So I think it's something that we can accomplish.
Right, well, that's encouraging. I stand by, Congressman. We have much more to assess. We're also getting new information, much more right after this.